It's a good bounce-back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end, and so that was
Everyone thought the drama was finally over when Team USA brought home the gold medal from Paris. But the real story was unfolding behind closed doors. And now, the final domino has officially fallen. After months of intense scrutiny, backlash, and accusations of sabotage, the head coach of Team USA, Cheryl Reeve, is officially out. While the corporate press release may try to frame this as a routine contract expiration or a mutual decision to part ways, the timing and the context tell a far darker, far more complicated story. This is about what happens when the establishment goes to war with the most popular athlete on the planet. Because it's starting to look like the decision to leave Caitlin Clark at home didn't just cost Team USA millions of views and millions in potential revenue. It may have ultimately cost the coach her job. To understand why this resignation is such a bombshell, we have to rewind to the moment that lit the match. It all began with a roster announcement that stunned the entire sports world. When the 2024 Olympic team was revealed, one name was glaringly absent: Caitlin Clark. This wasn't just a surprise omission for millions of fans. It felt like a statement. Clark was shattering viewership records, selling out arenas, and single-handedly reigniting interest in a sport that had struggled for relevance for decades. Yet she was told she wasn't ready for the international stage. Fans erupted, accusing the selection committee of blatant gatekeeping. And almost immediately, attention focused on the person believed to be pulling the strings: head coach Cheryl Reeve. The internet went to work, and what surfaced wasn't flattering. The conversation quickly shifted from basketball strategy to personal motive. Insiders and fans alike began speculating that the league's old guard wasn't simply skeptical of Clark. They were threatened by her. Rumors spread that keeping Clark off the roster had less to do with defense or experience and more to do with sending a message that she hadn't paid her dues yet. Instead of embracing the new face of the game, leadership appeared determined to dim her spotlight. And at the center of that storm stood the coach. But the tension didn't begin with the Olympic roster. It had been brewing for months, long before Clark ever played a single professional minute. Cheryl Reeve had made social media comments many interpreted as subtle shots at the rookie phenomenon. As preseason hype exploded, Reeve openly criticized the media's fixation on one player, urging fans to focus on the league as a whole. On paper, that sounded reasonable. To the millions of new fans Clark had brought in, it sounded like resentment. It felt like the people in charge were uncomfortable with the spotlight shifting away from established veterans and onto a rookie from Iowa. Every time Reeve brushed off a Clark question or visibly dismissed the hype, it reinforced the belief that this was personal. Fans often point to one specific social media post following a preseason game, where Reeve seemed to suggest that viewers were tuning in for the opposing team, not Clark herself. It was a small moment, but it set the tone for everything that followed. An us versus them line had been drawn. On one side stood a massive wave of new fans demanding to see the most electric player in the world. On the other stood the establishment, led by Reeve, digging in and insisting their way was the only way. Then the numbers came in, and they were impossible to ignore. While the WNBA enjoyed its most successful season ever thanks to the Clark effect, Olympic viewership told a different story. The gold medal game performed solidly, but it was a fraction of what it could have been. Analysts didn't mince words. Leaving the most famous female athlete on the planet at home wasn't just a basketball decision. They called it marketing suicide and a financial disaster. NBC, the network broadcasting the Olympics, was reportedly furious behind the scenes. They had bet heavily on the Caitlin Clark phenomenon to deliver historic ratings, and instead, they were left with a standard turnout. The coach and the selection committee gambled that basketball purity mattered more than fan demand. They won the gold medal, but they lost the public relations war. The basketball reasons narrative began to unravel the moment fans examined the actual roster construction. The argument was that Clark lacked experience and physicality. Yet viewers pointed out that Team USA struggled in the exact areas where Clark thrives: ball movement and floor spacing. There were moments throughout the Olympics, especially during the tight game against France, when the offense looked stagnant and predictable. Social media immediately lit up with one recurring comment: "You know who could fix this? Caitlin Clark." Every turnover, every missed shot, every offensive drought was viewed through the lens of that missing roster spot. The absence of the player who wasn't there loomed larger than the presence of those who were. Things escalated when reporters began pressing for answers. Instead of defusing the situation, the coach went on the offensive. During press conferences, the tension was unmistakable. She dismissed reports of animosity toward Clark as fiction and claimed she was taking bullets for the organization. It was a defiant stance, but it only amplified the backlash. By positioning herself as the shield for the committee's decision, she made herself the public face of the snub. Every interview became a battlefield, with the coach defending her legacy while fans flooded social media demanding accountability. The pressure kept building, and it became obvious that the toxicity surrounding the program had become a distraction no gold medal could erase. And it wasn't just fans who were frustrated. Whispers of dissatisfaction circulated quietly within the basketball world itself. Publicly, players continued to support the coach. Privately, agents and marketing executives told a different story. They understood the league had squandered a massive opportunity to globalize women's basketball. The Olympics are the biggest stage in sports. The merchandise sales, the viral highlights, the international spotlight. Imagine Clark pulling up from 30 feet in Paris. That moment never happened, and the opportunity vanished. In professional sports, lost revenue is often treated as a greater failure than lost games. The "taking bullets" comment proved especially revealing. When Reeve acknowledged she was absorbing the backlash, she confirmed how severe it had become. But by framing herself as a martyr, she only hardened public sentiment. It reinforced the perception that the establishment believed it knew better than the audience. It was a textbook disconnect between product and consumer. The audience wanted Clark. The decision-makers, the coach and the committee, refused to deliver. In any other industry, ignoring customer demand at that scale leads to leadership changes. And that is exactly what we're witnessing now. Throughout the WNBA season, the contrast was impossible to miss. Team USA's rigid philosophy stood in stark opposition to the Indiana Fever's explosive popularity. Every Fever game felt like an event. Away arenas sold out. Jersey sales skyrocketed. Random Tuesday night games outperformed NBA playoff broadcasts. Meanwhile, even as Team USA cruised through early Olympic rounds, the conversation remained negative. Comment sections were flooded with the same question: "Where is Caitlin?" It was a shadow they couldn't outrun. The joy of the gold medal run was drained by controversy. Then came the rivalry narrative. The idea that veterans wanted to humble Clark played out in real time during the WNBA season. Reeve was widely viewed as the general of that old guard. The hard fouls, the face guarding, the relentless physicality aimed at Clark. Fans connected all of it back to the Olympic snub. It felt coordinated, an attempt to break the rookie. But instead of breaking, Clark evolved. She shattered records. She led the league in assists. She posted triple-doubles. By the time the Olympics tipped off, the experience argument had already collapsed. Clark had proven she was among the best players in the world, making the snub look even more indefensible in hindsight. And for many observers, the close game against France was the moment everything finally clicked. Team USA, a roster loaded with WNBA MVPs and All-Stars, barely survived against a French team that, on paper, had no business being that close. The Americans escaped with a 1-point win, 67-66. It was far too close for comfort. Critics immediately pointed out the obvious issue. The lack of true playmaking was glaring. The offense slowed to a crawl, devolving into isolation possessions and contested shot. This was the exact problem Caitlin Clark was built to solve. Her ability to create offense for others isn't just elite, it's generational. Watching Team USA struggle to generate easy baskets while the best passer in the world sat at home was the final confirmation for many that the roster construction was fundamentally flawed. They won, but they didn't dominate the way a team that talented should have. After the Olympics, the silence was telling. Normally, a gold medal coach takes a victory lap. Talk show appearances, glowing profiles, early conversations about the next Olympic cycle. For Reeve, there was mostly quiet. The win felt hollow, overshadowed by a controversy that refused to fade. Then came the announcement that she would not be returning. While Reeve framed it as her own decision, saying she had done her time and was ready to move on, insiders believed the pressure had become unbearable. USA basketball needed a reset. They needed distance from the storm before the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. The timing is impossible to ignore. The next games will be on home soil, and it is effectively mandatory that Caitlin Clark be the face of that team. Having the same coach who left her off the roster in 2024 lead the program in 2028 would be a public relations disaster. Marketing the team under that cloud would have been nearly impossible. By removing Reeve from the equation, USA basketball is clearing the deck. They are removing the perceived villain to make room for the hero's return. There's also the issue of cultural fit. Reeve is synonymous with a hard-nosed, defense-first coaching philosophy. It's a style that has produced championships, but it clashes with the modern pace and space era Clark represents. The conflict wasn't just personal. It was philosophical. The old WNBA was built on grit, physicality, and post-play. The new era, ushered in by Clark, is about range, speed, and spacing. Reeve's departure signals that USA basketball understands it must adapt, not just to keep winning, but to keep people watching. And the media played a major role in accelerating that pressure. High-profile voices like Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee hammered the decision for months, calling it stupid, short-sighted, and rooted in jealousy. That kind of mainstream attention brought unprecedented scrutiny to women's basketball coaching decisions. Reeve wasn't just answering to beat reporters anymore. She was being dissected on ESPN during prime time. That level of heat wears people down. It drains the job of any joy. It's very possible she looked ahead, at the chaos of coaching Clark in the future, and decided it simply wasn't worth it. Her resignation feels like vindication for the fans. For months, they were told they didn't understand basketball. Told to sit down, stay quiet, and trust the experts. But in the end, the experts folded. The market spoke louder than credentials. Fans made one thing clear. They would not support a product that actively alienated its biggest star. And that represents a massive shift in the power dynamic of modern sport. In the digital age, the audience has a seat at the table. You can't dictate to fans anymore. You have to work with them. There's also the reality of player relationship. While Team USA players publicly backed the coach, the locker room dynamics had to be complicated. These athletes are smart. They understand where the money comes from. They know Clark's popularity is lifting everyone, higher salaries, charter flights, bigger endorsements, and sold-out arenas. And that reality changes everything. That's the Clark effect. And deep down, many of them likely understood it. Alienating the source of that growth was never just a basketball mistake. It was a terrible business decision. Cheryl Reeve becoming the antagonist in the Caitlin Clark story wasn't just bad optics. It was bad for the entire league's brand. So what happens next? With Reeve out, the search for a new head coach begins. And while it may never be written down, there is one unwritten rule that will guide the entire process. You must be able to work with Caitlin Clark. The next coach will almost certainly embrace modern offense. Someone who understands spacing, pace, and ball movement. Someone who also understands the marketing side of the sport, and who can manage the chaos that comes with coaching a superstar of Clark's magnitude. The 2028 Olympic team will look very different. It will be Clark's team. The offense will run through her. And the coach will be someone who is not threatened by that reality, but excited to hand her the keys. This entire saga is a lesson in ego versus reality. Cheryl Reeve is a legendary coach with a trophy case full of championship. No one can take that away from her. But whether it was ego or rigid loyalty to tradition, she failed to recognize the moment she was standing in. She tried to treat Caitlin Clark like just another rookie, missing the fact that Clark wasn't just a player. She was a movement, and you can't bench a movement. You can't humble a tidal wave. When you stand in front of it, you get washed away. The fallout from this decision will ripple through the league for years. It has exposed the widening gap between the WNBA's past and its future. Reeve's resignation is effectively a white flag from the old guard. An admission that resistance is futile. The gatekeepers have lost the keys. The sport now belongs to the new generation. And any leader who refuses to accept that reality will meet the same fate as the former head coach of Team USA. Looking ahead, Clark's integration into the senior national team is no longer a question. It's inevitable. The snub will become part of her mythologue. Why? The chip on her shoulder that fueled her ascent. Just like the story of Michael Jordan being cut from his high school varsity team, questionable in truth, but powerful in legend, Caitlin Clark being left off the 2024 Olympic roster will become the story we tell to explain her relentless drive. And Cheryl Reeve will be remembered as the antagonist in that chapter. The coach who didn't believe. The obstacle that had to be removed. In the end, Team USA got the gold medal, but they left an enormous amount of goodwill on the table. Reeve's departure signals a changing of the guard. A realization that you cannot fight the future of the sport. Caitlin Clark is only getting bigger, and the next leadership group will almost certainly build everything around her. It's a brutal lesson in modern sports. Talent wins games. Superstars build empires. And ignoring that reality is a fireable offense. The coach believed she could win the battle against the Clark fans and the media frenzy. But she lost the war. The fans won. Caitlin Clark won. And now Team USA has a clean slate to finally give people what they've been asking for all along. After the Olympics, the silence said everything. Normally, a gold medal coach takes a victory lap. Talk shows, glowing profiles, early discussions about the next cycle. For Reeve, there was mostly quiet. The victory felt hollow. The controversy still hung in the air. Then came the announcement. She would not be returning. While she framed it as her own decision, insiders believed the pressure had simply become too heavy. USA basketball needed a reset. They needed to wash their hands of the controversy before the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. The timing lines up perfectly. The next games will be on home soil, and it is effectively mandatory that Caitlin Clark be the face of that team. Keeping the same coach who snubbed her in 2024 would have been a public relations nightmare. Marketing that team under those conditions would have been impossible. By removing Reeve now, USA basketball is clearing the deck. Removing the villain to make room for the hero's return. And there's still the cultural clash to acknowledge. Reeve's hard-nosed, defense-first philosophy produced championships, but it clashes with the pace and space era Clark represents. This wasn't just personal. It was philosophical. The old WNBA was built on grit, physicality, and post-play. The new era, ushered in by Clark, is about range, speed, creativity, and spacing. Reeve's departure is a signal that USA basketball knows it must evolve if it wants to keep winning, and more importantly, if it wants to keep people watching. And the media played a huge role in accelerating that shift. Voices like Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee hammered the decision for months, calling it stupid, short-sighted, and driven by jealousy. That level of mainstream scrutiny changed everything. Reeve wasn't just answering to beat reporters anymore. She was being criticized on national television in prime time. That kind of pressure breaks people. In the end, the market spoke louder than the resume. And that reality changed the course of Team USA basketball forever.